Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hey, this is Jen. You're listening to the Bible for Busy People, where this week we are talking about plants. Now, potentially the most significant symbolic plant in the Bible are grapevines. Although I would say trees are on the table too, considering the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the cross. But we talked about trees a couple weeks ago, so this week we're on plants. Now, there are over 200 references to grapevines, grapes, and wine in the Bible, according to the website Atara Group. Grapes and vineyards were and are important culturally, agriculturally, and economically to the Middle East, producing food that could be eaten fresh or dried, as well as wine. Vineyards were often built into hillsides for the best sunlight and good drainage, and so they would have been a common sight to see. They were also built on fertile grounds with good conditions for growing the fruit. Wine was a big part of celebrations and festivals, as it is today, and was even acceptable as a drink offering before God. So vineyards and vines represented abundance and prosperity, a blessing from God, and being passed from generation to generation. Deuteronomy 6, verses 10 to 12 is a description of the promised land God gives to the Israelites, and that includes vineyards. Psalm 104, verses 14 to 15 includes wine as a blessing from God. 1 Kings 4:25 uses a common phrase to talk about how prosperous and safe people were under the rule of a king. It says, during Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel from Dan to Beersheba lived in safety, everyone under their own vine and under their own fig tree. And Amos 9, verses 13 through 15 uses a heavy analogy of vineyards and wines to talk about how God will bless Israel in the future. Vines and vineyards were also symbolic of Israel itself in the scriptures. Isaiah 5 verses 1 to 2 makes this analogy, and it also describes the effort it takes to cultivate vineyards. It requires constant work and pruning and can be affected by thieves, animals, and bad crops. Isaiah 5 verses 1 to 2 says, I will sing for the one I love, a song about his vineyard. My loved one had a vineyard on a fertile hillside. He dug it up and cleared it of stones and planted it with the choicest vines. He built a watchtower in it and cut out a winepress as well. Then he looked for a crop of good grapes, but it yielded only bad fruit. Psalm 80 verses 8 to 10 says, You transplanted a vine from Egypt. You drove out the nations and planted it. You cleared the ground for it, and it took root and filled the land. The mountains were covered with its shade, the mighty cedars with its branches. Its branches reached as far as the sea, its shoots as far as the river. Again, this is an example of a vineyard being an analogy for Isaiah. And Ezekiel 15 talks about the uselessness of a vineyard that does not produce fruit. In Matthew 21, Jesus tells a parable about a vineyard. In verse 33, it says, Listen to another parable. There was a landowner who planted a vineyard. He put a wall around it, dug a winepress in it, and built a watchtower. Then he rented the vineyard to some farmers and moved to another place. When the harvest time approached, he sent his servants to the tenants to collect his fruit. The tenants seized his servants. They beat one, killed another, and stoned a third. Then he sent other servants to them more than the first time, and the tenants treated them the same way. Last of all, he sent his son to them. They will respect my son, he said. But when the tenants saw the son, they said to each other, This is the heir. Come, let's kill him and take his inheritance. So they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. Can you imagine Jesus telling this story and knowing what was to come? In verse 40, it says, Therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? He will bring those wretches to a wretched end, they replied, and he will rent the vineyard to other tenants who will give him his share of the crop at harvest time. Jesus said to them, Have you never read in the scriptures, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone? The Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore, I tell you that the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people who will produce its fruit. Anyone who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces. Anyone on whom it falls, it will be crushed. So this, as you might be able to gather, is symbolic of Israel, of its leaders, and the prophets that God sent, as well as Jesus himself. Jesus also notably talked about how, when we are connected to him, the true vine, we will produce fruit, as is our purpose. This is in John chapter 15, starting in verse 1. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because the servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. And so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other. Branches don't sit on their own and bear fruit. They have to be connected to the vine to receive the nutrients they need to produce anything, and even to stay alive themselves. Jesus said over and over to remain in him and let his words remain in us. How do we do that? I read this as living with wholehearted devotion and connect this to the living water Jesus promised the woman at the well in John chapter 4. God flows in every area of our lives. We recognize God in the good that goes on in our lives. We notice the absence of God in evil. We choose to live in a way that honors God. We obey the commands, and we listen to God with reverence in all the various ways God speaks to us. It's not so much a checklist of things to do as it is living in such a way that your purpose is clear. I imagine it's like how Olympic athletes live their lives. They don't necessarily checklist tasks to stay fit and active and healthy. It's just their whole way of being and the way they carry themselves and take care of themselves. Living by the book is only going to get you so far. That's why Jesus called us to love God and love others as ourselves. Love is a way of being. It's not a rule book or a list of tasks. So vines were symbols of abundance, prosperity, safety, and healthy connection to God. What lesson from the vines will you take to heart today? I'll leave you with that, and we'll talk again tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to The Bible for Busy People. If you need prayer or want to go deeper in your faith, visit our show notes. Will you take a moment to share with a friend and leave a review? It helps the Bible get into even more people's minds and hearts. Find more podcasts that will recharge you at purposely.com.